So today mostly we are going to see this. It is not a completely hands-on lab exercise, but it is going to be whatever we have discussed so far, how in a real-time project, how it can be implemented. That we will see at a detail level. Then we will see a quick summary whatever we have discussed so far, and if anybody has any queries, we'll discuss on that. So now you're able to see my screen, right? Is it clear, right? Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
So now if you see a complete workflow of data warehouse, it looks like this. And then we are going to extract the data, then we are going to load the data, then we are going to do data modeling. Then finally we are populating the data in the form of views. Then the business users is going to be consume the data by connecting that particular PRS layer. So now we'll see detail level all these layers. So now if you see here in this diagram, I have taken a kind of example of same retail stores. So now from each retail stores, whenever we purchase anything, they'll be you're going to do this billing, right? So when we are doing that billing, they're going to store all these details. They'll just scan that product details and all, and with our mobile number, all the details, customer details will be automatically populated. Okay. So now that data will be stored in the particular. Here I have taken all these source systems as a SQL databases, but it could be no SQL databases, or it could be Excel files, or it could be web logs. It could be anything with respect to these source systems. But for our convenience, for this particular example purpose, I have taken as a SQL databases. So now whatever products we are purchasing, automatically all those data will be stored in this particular database. So now we know, right, in SQL database, all the data will be stored in the form of tables only, relational tables, right? So now I have taken example of very few records, because it's not possible to incorporate all the records, right? In a real time, it will be a very huge data will be there, and more number of columns also will be there. But for our example purpose, I have taken like a very few columns. So now if you see this table structure, customer ID is there, customer name and customer mobile number and product ID and product name and quantity, unit cost, location, store ID, and that particular city and purchase date. So these are the common columns. But if you go to the real time, you might have a very detailed level. For example, if you take a Walmart and all very big stores will be there, right? So now you might have little bit more detailed information with respect to these customers as well, like what is his location and how frequently is purchasing and what is his, he might have some points and all, right? So when we do purchase and all, they used to provide some reward points and all, right? So all those details will be there. Even in the product level, what would be the brand and what is the product name and what is the category, all the details will be there. But I just simplified for our demo purpose. I have taken very few columns here. So now this is a one particular store, this is another store, and this is another store. Okay, so see now this you can assume like this particular store, it can, you can just assume as a three stores. Okay, so now when we are seeing here, these are the customers and they have purchased these items, and this is the individual unit cost, in the sense particular item cost, and this is the number of items they have purchased, and this is that particular location and the store ID. So now I have taken example as a Bangalore city. In Bangalore city, multiple locations are there and multiple stores are there. So now I have picked up only one record from one store. Just it is an example, so you don't go very deep level about this data. This is, I'm just trying to understand for you people how the workflow will work in a real-time project. So this is how the real-time projects, when you are working any project in any organization, this is how it going to be that entire workflow. So now data is stored into this all these source databases. Whatever you are seeing here, these are all the stored databases. And in these databases, you have number of tables and number of data sets and all, but for our example, I have taken only one. So now when we are discussing about this data warehouse workflow, it is always kind of a traditional data warehouses. They will follow the approach as a ETL, extraction, transfer, and load, right? Or ELT, right? Extraction, load, and transform. So now, if you see here, trying to follow the ELT approach, or you can follow ETL approach also, nothing wrong in that. It is depends on the organization. So now, if you see, I'm trying to extract this data. So now, how we can extract this data, right? We should. So we are talking about extract the data, but how we are going to extract this data? So what are the ways are there? What are the ways are available to extract the data in traditional data warehouse? Okay. So now if you see, I have mentioned here three categories. So total the fourth category will come into the cloud. So that we will discuss it later. But now since we are talking about legacy data warehouses or traditional data warehouse here is, so they can follow any one of these methods. Okay, so enterprise ETL in the sense, these all are licensed tools in the sense, every year or you need to, whatever contract you have having with that particular organization, based on that, you are going to utilize their tools. For example, since you are using here is a SQL database, right? You can go with the Oracle Data Integrator tool, or you can go with the Informatica, or is like a SAP, IBM. These all are, there are certain tools, enterprise in the sense at organization level, they have built some tools to extract and do the transformations and load the data into the data warehouse. And these all are not free of cost. These all are enterprise versions, which means you need to pay for these companies and you can install this particular application in your organization level. And when you log into your particular project specified system, you are going to have all the softwares and all. Even though if it is not available, you can raise a request and they will immediately install this particular softwares. So now then you are going to utilize these tools and you are establishing the connection with the source systems and you are going to extract the data and then you can going to proceed further. Then another method is, it is a kind of a open source tools, ETL. So open source in the sense, it is a free of cost, which means you have very minimal cost. You don't need to pay like kind of a annual licenses and all. So you don't need to worry about like you should know about all these things and all. But ideally, people will ask like what kind of tools you are using to extract this data and all. So you can pick up any one of these from this list and you can mention them, but you can tell them I don't have any hands-on experience on that. My work will be started with respect to from data warehouse. Once the data is landed into the landing area, from there onwards my work will start and this will be taken care by default. Okay, so you can mention in such a way. There are certain people, they will utilize only these tools. So they'll mention ETL developer tool and their job, it will be kind of a ETL developer. So when they're putting this ETL developer, then they might have a expertise in any one of these tools, either Informatica, Microsoft SQL Server, or Oracle Data Integration, or IBM Data Stage. Okay, with respect to this particular tool, there are roles are there and people will work. But here, whatever we are going to discuss, it is not exactly aligned with that, but it is a kind of a complementary for these particular roles, whatever the job we are doing. Or else you can mention there is a separate team, they will extract that data and they will populate the data into that landing or staging area. From there onwards, we are going to taking care. That is a now coming to the open source, there are kind of a Talent, Hadoop, Kafka, NiFi cluster. So these kind of, I have taken popular tools. There are so many things are there market. You can Google it and you will get to know about all these tools and all. So these open sources tools, you no need to pay anything for them. It is openly available in the market. You can utilize those tools and you can extract this data and you can load the data into your data warehouse. Now the third option is custom based ETL. Custom based ETL in the sense, these are not a particular tools. These are a kind of you are going to utilize some set of technologies, programming languages, and you are going to write a code. So that particular script, it is going to be connected with the particular source system and will extract the data. Then you're going to load the data into the data warehouse. So I have seen mostly this second and third options in the real-time projects, because first one is a little bit costly, right? So there are specific projects. For example, if IBM organization is there, then they will use their product. IBM is their product, right? They will use the IBM data stage. And if there are SAP organization is there, so SAP, they will use this particular tools. Now coming to other organizations, they might go with the either open source or they'll go with the custom based ETL. So custom based in the sense you can write a SQL code or store procedure in PLSQL, or you can write a Python script, or you can write a shell script. So old systems, mostly people will have this shell scripts and all. It is already defined. So even though you are going to handle everything, you just going to utilize that script. You are not going to write anything newly. So what we will do, you do just run that script. It will connect this source system and it will extract the data, and it will store the data in the form of CSV file in staging or landing area. So our actual work will start from here. You can mention in such a way. So we have a predefined scripts already, which is available in Unix shell scripts, or it could be any custom language script. And we are just running the scripts so that those scripts will be based on job schedule every day at a certain point in time. Every day at 5 o'clock or every day at 6 o'clock it will run, and it will extract the data and it will load the data into this particular staging and landing area. So what is this staging and landing area? It is again kind of a server, Linux server or Unix server. Okay, so what they will do, they'll just place this data in the form of CSV files. So the data stored in the data source systems, it is in the form of table, right? So now you cannot copy this table as it is, and you cannot place it in the staging area in Linux server. So you are just extracting the data and you are storing the data in the form of CSV files. CSV in the sense comma separated values. So you're just extracting the columns and the data and you are placing in the CSV file. So CSV file in the sense nothing, is just like take an example of system name and date dot CSV. It's stored as a CSV. So now since I have saved as a CSV, directly it is showing in a kind of a Excel format here. But ideally, if you change that, normally if you change something in a CSV, it looks like this. And CSV, right? So now if you open in a notepad, it will open as a comma separated values because we have saved as a CSV, right? This is how that files will be saved in staging and landing area. So this is simply nothing about extraction. Is it clear? Anybody has any doubts here so far?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Is it clear, right? How the data will be stored in the staging, and from the source systems, how it will coming to the landing area. So now these files are available in the Unix or Linux server in the form of CSV. So now again, you can utilize these customized based ETL scripts. Either could be SQL store procedure or shell script or Python script. So what it will do, or you can use any one of these tools as well. So they will load this data into the data warehouse. The extraction part is done. I'm doing now loading here. If you are going with that ETL approach, so most probably, as I mentioned, ETL developers will be there, right? So they will do this all the transformations and all by using Informatica or that corresponding tool. Then finally they load the data into the staging. Okay, so once the data is available in the staging, then you are not going to do any kind of a SCD type or type 1. I mean to say, it is a kind of a most probably one-on-one mapping. That is a different approach. We will discuss about that also briefly. Now coming to the loading part, this is a kind of a data warehouse I have mentioned, right? In data warehouse, wherever you go, mostly we have a 3 layers in this data warehouse: staging, INT, and means INT in the sense integration, PR means presentation layer. So now when you're talking about the staging or raw layer, so this we called as in technical terms in our real-time projects layers. So it could be in the data warehouse, either you can consider as a schemas. These 3. Like this, so many databases. So these all 3 will be aligned with the particular one database inside this data warehouse. We know, right? Data warehouse is a consist of multiple data collection of databases, right? So inside this particular database, we have these three schemas. Similarly, multiple databases will be there. For example, I'm bringing some sales data. Then I'll named as my database name as a sales. Inside the sales, these three layers will be there. If I'm going to bringing some kind of financial data, customer financial data, then I'll name it as a CFC. It is a kind of a naming convention based on that source systems, what kind of source, who is going to send the data, and whatever the data we are bringing to the data warehouse into the corresponding database. So like this data warehouse has multiple source systems, right? We are talking about only one source system here, but across at enterprise level, they have multiple source systems, and we named as the database names to align with the source systems. Why? Because it is easy to understand, right? So if you want to see the customer financial data, we'll go to that directly, that particular database, and you will be able to see the data. Now, if you go any database, these three layers or these three schema structures will be by default same. Only the database names will change. And the schema names also, either if you want to maintain is a name as it is, you can maintain, or if you want to change these names with respect to the database names also, we'll put as a prefix and all. But ideally inside the database, so this is a complete data warehouse. This inside this data warehouse, we have a multiple databases. Whatever I'm showing here is one database details. Now, while loading the data into that particular data warehouse in the staging layer, I'll just simply load all these feed files data into the in a single table. So now I got the data in the form of bits and pieces. Then finally I loaded the data into the stage table. So there will be design discussions with the architect team. So all these details will be provided from the source systems. As part of the discussion, they will say, okay, we are going to send these many files, and these would be the data volume, and these are the column structures, and these are the data types, and these are the sizes of these columns, and these are the column names. Everything they will provide. So now what we will do, we will create the empty structure in this particular stage table. For example, if they are going to send some 3 data sets, here I have taken only sample only one customer data set. Right now, for example, if they're going to send by separating this data in the form of 3 feed files, either one is a customer and another one is product data and another one is kind of a store or purchase data, right? So we are going to create a 3 different stage tables. So now I have taken example only one. So I'm going to ingest the data or load the data into the staging layer in the customer detail table. Okay. So now I have brought the data, whatever is there in the source system, into my data warehouse stage layer. So once the data is available in the stage layer, now from here onwards, the organizations will follow different approaches. Okay. So now if I don't want to implement any data modeling, I want to make it simple my data warehouse. What we will do, we are going to create another table, but if you are going to do some small transformations and all with respect to this particular table, and you will either you can create a 2 to 3 tables also, one-on-one mapping, no relation and all. Most probably relation in the sense you can create a primary key foreign key relationship, but you are not going to follow the any particular data modeling methodology. You just create the tables and you will put like of these dates and all. You can extract the dates and you can put in a meaningful way, and you can load the same data into that int table, and then finally you are going to create a view on this particular int table in a PRS layer. So most probably these views as having a aggregated values, and finally those values going to send to the business consumers. So they are going to use this data in the by using their tools and techniques. So now coming to, I have taken example here is a data modeling method.
Now suppose if we start with prior to integration, while we are putting in staging,
Yes.
this staging will be a very huge table with all the data.
Yes. So
okay. Now suppose if I
Go on.
tell a customer has customer and his purchase.
Okay.
So it's a this table has customer ID, purchase ID, order ID,
Yep.
and time and date stamp.
Yes.
Quantity, discount, and
Yep.
price.
Yeah.
So while it is going into the integration, that
Yep.
table will split into 2 things.
Yep.
One will be customer ID, customer name, and customer detail, customer city.
Yep.
The another table will be order ID,
Yep.
customer ID,
Yep.
and the product name
Hmm.
and product price.
Hmm.
So this is how you will break up a huge table into multiple small tables. Is
Yes.
it this mechanism?
Yeah, that is the approach, right? When you are following a dimensions and facts tables, that is the methodology, right? That is we are going
Mhm.
to discuss now.
Okay.
See, it's all up to your organization. That is not
And
something is taken our own decision, right?
and now
Now,
in staging we have taken only one table. Is it possible that in staging there can be multiple tables?
how the source system is going to send the data.
Okay, how the source system is
Yes,
going
that
to
is
send
the
data?
important. So now if the source systems are sending a multiple files with a multiple data sets separately, then we are going to create the tables. Here, for example purpose, I have taken one table because it is not possible for me to incorporate all the tables, right? I just want to see at the data level how it looks like. Now, in this stage table, yes, of course, the data will be going to increase after certain period of time. But before that, there is a point here, right? So we have discussed full load and incremental load, right? So now if you are going to send this data every time as a full load from the source systems, you are not going to maintain all the data in the stage. You are just going to truncate the stage every day. Day-to-day data will be there in the stage table. So in organizations, we are going to maintain as a retention period for 7 days. So last 7 days data only will be available in the stage.
Sir,
And
now
from this,
what did
yeah,
you repeat? Single, what did you say? The
so
single load and multiple load.
full load and incremental load.
No, that was regarding what is the full load and incremental load.
Yeah, so full load is something every day. See now I have three records here. Tomorrow another new record will come. Along with these four records they will send it. And day after they will send it 5 records. Day after they will send it all 10 records. Which means every time whatever is the data is available in this particular table, entire the data they are going to send it. And they are going to maintain this particular data at source end. So this full load is most probably if the data is not growing too much, so very less frequency is there, then they are going to send this full load. Entire data, why I need to maintain that entire data in the staging table? Months of data, not required, right? So I'll just truncate this entire stage table. I will load that entire data into the stage table. But if they are going to send only latest information, I mean to say, not all historical data, they're going to just send only new records every time. What I need to do? I need to insert the data into this particular stage table, and then I need to load the data into that INT table based on any SCD type. So based on the requirement, if the business is want to store that history as well here, then we are going to build that history into that INT layer, and the stage layer it will be kind of a last 1 month or 2 months. We'll keep it, not beyond that. It is not going to be having all historical data. It will be recommended kind of a truncate load or only kind of a last 7 days or 1 month data. If there is something goes wrong in that INT layer, you can quickly get back the data from the stage layer. That is the main intention, to keep it that 1 week or 1 month data. That period we called as a retention period. Is it clear? Is it clear or not about this full load or incremental load?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So now we are talking about this star schema, dimension and facts data modeling. So I'm following the star schema here. So now when I got this data, I'm going to create these many tables by splitting this data. So by seeing this flat file or this table data, I can see quantities and unit cost having a kind of a aggregate values. The remaining all having a descriptive of this particular aggregate values, right? So now I'll build a customer dimension table. So the customer dimension table is customer key as a primary key will be there. Then the customer name and mobile, all other details, address, age group, all the remaining details will be coming to the particular dimension table, customer dimension table. Similarly, product dimension table. Then similarly, store dimension table. So now see these columns, it will be based on that whatever they're sending. we will be defining those. There are set of additional columns as well. So you might not able to see few of the columns which is available here in this particular table. For example, if you see that dimension date table, so now you are going to get this particular only purchase date, nothing else. So from this you are going to extract what is the year, what is the month, what is the day, what is the month number, and what is the day of week, and what is the full date. All the details you are going to get it from this. Similarly, when they're sending these product names, they might have put that particular brand name also. Then you are going to create another dimension as a brand, and you are going to put that brand name, brand ID, and which model. All the details will come into that other particular dimension table. That is a kind of a, if you are going more granular level, that we called as a Snowflake schema. Now here we are discussing about a star schema, right? So star schema is represent of fact table will be in the center and surrounded by the dimension tables. So based on the simple data set, I have taken a few dimensions tables. So all these primary keys align with the fact tables is it is kind of a associated with the relationship primary key and foreign key. And apart from these keys, in the fact table, it will have only kind of a aggregated values, not any other descriptive values. Kind of a what is the sales quantity, what is the sales price, what is the sales amount. So now, for example, if you see, this is the sales quantity and this is a particular unit item cost. So now if you want to get the total, you are going to do this multiply with this particular quantity. That all calculations, everything can be done in this particular table while populating the data. So once all these dimensions and fact tables are created, first we will load the data. It is just SQL. You can write SQL queries, right? Insert into this particular dimension table, and you will take the data from this particular stage table, whatever the columns you want. So there are few key columns. If you want to auto generate, you can create a sequences and all, you can generate it. So now once the data is populated into the dimensions, then based on these dimensions, I'm going to populate the data into the fact tables by aggregating these values. Then I'm moving to that PRS layer, which is nothing but a presentation layer. And this presentation layer, it is, I have taken very simple example here. So it depends on the business use case, how business they want the data. Then we are going to create a view for that particular logic. And we will join these dimensions and fact tables, and we will get that corresponding. Basically, we are going to apply that business logic, how the business wants this data, and we are going to populate the data into the PRS layer in the form of view. So the business team only have access for this particular PRS layer, not beyond this. Because here we are going to maintain history, all kind of data, right? You are going to create a view, only some set of the data, whatever the data is needed for them. So now here I have taken, I just want to see that monthly, what are the products and what are the total units sold out and what would be the total cost. So now based on this data, these are the dates. So while populating this particular data into the dimension date table, I'm going to extract that month from this date, right? In SQL, we have a built-in functions. So now you people are already aware of this SQL, right? So now you can use to_char or to_date functions, and you can extract that particular date and you can name it as a however you want into this table. So now I'll be taking that month from that particular table and the product IDs from the product table, and then total units sold out for this particular fact table. So I'll be joining these two tables, and I'll take that particular product ID and I'll be joining that product ID here and total units sold for that particular product, and finally total cost of items. So here itself I'll get that amount, right? Or else you can put a condition like multiply by that unit cost. Then I'll get that total cost. So once the data is available in this particular presentation layer, we will inform to the business teams, hey, I have make it the data available in presentation layer. This is the view name, and go ahead and check the data and let me know if you have any concerns. Then they have a certain tools and techniques. So I have taken example as a populated one, Power BI. They might have a ClickSense, ClickView. There are so many tools are there. So they're going to connect by using the tool to this particular PRS layer, and they're going to build the dashboards or charts and all. So now this is a kind of a simple table. So this particular diagram is not exactly related to this, but why I have put this? So the real time screenshot, it will be kind of a like this. as a business owner, he wants to see the sales managers and all will be there, right? At organization higher level. If you go, like we are as a developer or data engineer, we are working. We might not want to know about that how the business is going. Our duty is we need to fulfill their requirements. So once the data is available and once the developers they build these all dashboards and all, if I am the kind of a product owner, I'll just sit into my cabin somewhere in some country. I'll just open that and I'll see what is the total sales overview from last couple of years, how it is going on. Is there is any drop in the graph or the graph is increasing? What is the my revenue is increasing or not? It is a kind of a decisions, right? I mean, strategic decisions. So now if they're seeing there is some drop in that these sales in a particular branch or particular year, they will try to see what is the reasons basically why the sales got dropped down. So such a way they can navigate and they can find out the insights from the business. These all are kind of we called as the insights from the business. So now they can compare previous sales and this year sales and what is there is a growth is there or not. If not met expectations, then what would be the causes, how we can avoid those challenges. Such all these things they will discuss at a higher level and they will come up with some plans and all. So now for example, if you take a simple example, like whenever if there is any particular customer is continuously purchasing from one particular store in other countries and all, they will get some reward points and all. So far we have seen, right, in older days, so these retail stores used to give a card and they will provide the reward points for each purchase time. So now you can target the right audience. So now for example, after collecting all this information, you will get to know what is the customer interest and what is the customer's trend, what kind of products they're purchasing. So now for example, there is a customer XYZ and he is showing interest more on electric gadgets. Then what these people will do, they will pick up such kind of all customers details and they will send promotional emails and promotional messages to them. So they're saying we are going to introduce a new product is coming. There are 20% offer in this particular electric gadget, 30% offer is on this particular electric gadget. They used to send a promotional messages. So if that customer is really interested in this products, when he is getting offers, obviously show to interest to purchase that product, right? That's how the business will target that right audience. So this is the about complete workflow about data warehouse. Is it clear or anybody has any queries? Now between the data movement from stage to INT, different ways are there as I mentioned. This is a star schema. They can go ahead with the Snowflake schema if they want to maintain the data more granular level. If they're going with the Snowflake schema from these dimensions, from for example, if you take a product, you can create another dimension, brand. And you might have receiving only some particular name of that product item and you are going to create the dimension is brand ID, brand name, that model number, all the details you are going to populate into that. That is about Snowflake schema. But if you are, as I mentioned, if you are going to with one-on-one, you just create based on your convenience these models and you are going to populate the data in the one-on-one mapping. And finally, you are sum upping those tables and you are populating into the PRS layer.
Can you please tell me PRS full form?
Presentation layer.
Okay.
So that name, it is not a kind of a standard for any organization. It is their own, based on their own naming standards, people will follow. So now whatever here is, you are able to see, you might not able to see the same names in your project. Okay, please note that point. So here I have mentioned is that for our convenience, mostly the famous popular names, what I have seen in the cloud, I have just named it. But if you go to your project, it could be kind of they named as a, instead of STG, they can name as a raw. And instead of INT, they can name as a curated. Instead of PRS, they can name as a consumption. Or few people will put a kind of a silver, gold, diamond, or bronze, silver, gold. It is up to them. What you want to understand here, what kind of data having that particular layer. That is the most important thing. So presentation layer always will have a kind of a views and aggregated values. The presentation layer name anything, but what kind of data it will have? Most probably views and aggregated values, because we are going to give the data to the business people. Business people have access only to this particular presentation layer. Now coming to that INT and stage will always having the raw data. That's why sometimes people will call as a raw. Raw data in the sense, it is like whatever data you are receiving from the source, you are just as it is, you are loading into that particular stage table. You are not modifying anything. Now coming to that INT layer, so that INT layer always the data will be stored in the form of modeled or in the form of transformed. This is the major difference between these three layers. So people might question to you like, what is the data retention period you will be following for the stage table? It is a kind of mostly full load means 1 week. Delta load means it depends on the project requirement. Full load versus delta load already we have discussed in previous class, and just now I also already explained, right? Still, if anybody has any queries, don't hesitate it. Speak out now.
Sir, in data warehouse, there is always 3 layers.
Not always. Majority of the times they'll have a 3, but if it depends again organization to organization. Between this INT layer and PRS layer, there are certain organizations they can follow data marts. Those are separate. Again, separate schemas will come, data marts, before coming to the presentation layer. And there are certain companies, they will just follow only stage and INT and just follow the data marts. There is no concept of presentation layer. For them, data marts is the presentation layer. So they will give access to the data marts. So again, those data marts also kind of a one schema only, and we'll name it, and inside the data mart we'll populate the data and we'll give them to that access to that particular.
Power BI concept means.
See, this Power BI is a kind of a tool. They will use this particular tool and they will establish the connection to this particular PRS layer, and they based on this data they will build these dashboards and all. So that Power BI is a separate technology. See, now when we are talking about the data warehouse, you are not going to do everything. So please note that I have given complete workflow about the data warehouse. Since you are working in a data warehouse, people will ask how the business is going to consume the data. So then you should aware of that functionality, right? So that's why I have included. So your majority of the work will be aligned with the data warehouse inside, not this one. Power BI developers will be there separately. They are going to build these dashboards and all. They know in and out about the Power BI. Now there are ETL developers will be there. They're going to know in and out about that particular tool, how they're connecting this, how they're doing the transformations, everything. They'll take care. So you no need to worry it. So why I have mentioned, because you should aware of that process. So during interviews, people will question you. Okay, now you're bringing the data. How the data is going to be helpful for the business? How the data is going to be consumed by business team? You can tell them, but nobody is going to ask you how you can build this chart, how you implemented in Power BI, nothing. That is not our responsibility, our scope. You are just working in the data warehouse, data engineer. So your duty, you are just going to bring the data from multiple sources into the data warehouse. So here it might be already established tool will be there, or you can go with the customized approach. If you have some particular tool, you have a little bit idea about the tool, not a technical level and all, you can mention them. We are using an Informatica tool and we are getting the data from the source systems, and once the data is available landing area, from there onwards my actual work will start. So we have a script, store procedure or shell script is there. It is a default script. So we are just using that script, we are calling that script, and we are loading the data into the stage table. Then from there onwards your actual work will start, and you are going to create all these tables. Now this is a complete project. This is real-time project. You can put your resume and you can explain to them. So now coming to this project, what would be your roles and responsibilities? It is something you are going to interact with the source team, and you are going to understand the requirement. So how many fields they're sending, what is the data volume, and how many columns are there, what is the data type, what are the data types for that columns. All those details you are going to get it from the source system. Then you are creating the tables in staging layer based on that structure. Then I'll be creating a INT based on the data modeling or one-on-one mapping. Once all these tables are created, then I'll ask source team to send a sample data for testing purpose. Once they send the sample data, I'll call this particular procedures or scripts, whatever it is, we are going to load the data. Then I'll try to load the data into the stage table. Then I'll connect with the source system and I'll ask them to validate this data. Is it okay or not? Or if you observed some discrepancies with respect to the data, you can bring up that queries with the source system and you can clarify that. Then once everything looks good, then you are going to populate the data into that INT, then PRS with test data first. So once the data is populated into presentation layer, you can connect with the business team and you can inform to them to do query this data and see if everything looks good or not. They will see the data and they will give a confirmation to you. Then that solution will go to the live in the sense production. First development work will be done, then it is going to be test this entire data flow, then finally it is moving to the production. It's a lengthy process. It is not going to be happen in a single day. It will take months, but this is a complete workflow or complete picture of the data warehouse. Any doubts? With this, we are going to wind up the data warehouse, traditional data warehouse concepts, and from Monday onwards, we are going to start the Snowflake. So please ask me if you have any queries with respect to the previous sessions or with respect to today's session. If you have any queries. So far, if
No,
I'm
sir.
kind of to quick summary, we have discussed about data warehouse architecture and how we are going to organize the data inside the data warehouse and what are the technical terminologies are there on what is mean by what is the difference between dimensions and facts and SCD types and CDC. I have given complete information with respect to the real-time project.
Yes,
I already
class.
have
Yesterday
uploaded the
class.
notes. It is there in that. I don't know if people already verified it. From last 3 days class sessions, already I have uploaded the notes. Yesterday's one is pending. Yesterday's one I'll upload today.
Okay, sir.
Yep.
If you have a complete workflow document, step by steps.
I'll send this diagram.
Okay.
Yeah. So ideally, like now when you seeing, you can see from the recordings also, it is a very simple. You have already given, right? So pretty much same. Anybody has any queries? So please go through all these and come up with queries on Monday for the data warehouse, traditional data warehouse. So now if you are going to the Snowflake, again, we are going to utilize the same concepts or same terminologies. But this entire data warehouse and this entire workflow will be moved to the cloud. There is the only major difference at a high level. But the remaining tools and technologies will be same. This Power BI still they will connect the cloud and they will consume the data and they will build the dashboards and all. So the source systems, it could be they move to cloud or they could not in a cloud. If it is there in on-prem, then this part, everything will move to the cloud. Okay, then you can wind up for today.